Good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of the Storytellers. Uh, as you know, we gather together here to tell stories, and we tell stories so that we can seed some discussion among each other. And we all need to talk so much to each other, especially in these days when we're all isolated. And that's where the storytellers really come in. We do two sessions every month, one on the second Saturday of the month and one on the fourth. And the second Saturday one is typically an open event. And what I mean by an open event is that we invite anyone to come and tell a story. So do reach out to us if you'd like to tell a story next month on the second Saturday or the month thereafter. And we'd welcome having you as a part of those sessions. I'll say a few lines about what's coming up in 2 weeks' time from now, which is the fourth Saturday of the month, is we're having a session on a retrospective on the stories of Rajinder Singh Bedi. So Rajinder Singh Bedi was an excellent Urdu author, and he wrote in Urdu and Hindi. In fact, he was closely connected with Bollywood, and he made several films. Dastak, the movie, is really one of his most well-known films. But his short stories are incredible. They are so touching and they're so full of human emotion. I hope you will be there to join us on 26th of February at 6 o'clock for a retrospective and an excellent discussion, I hope, on Rajinder Singh Bedi's stories. But let's come back to today's session. And we are almost at the eve of Valentine's Day. And therefore, typically this session in February, our story is about love. Love in all its forms and all its kinds. So we won't straitjacket love in these stories here. And the way we're going to do this today is that we're going to have three stories. Each of the tellers will tell their story. At the end of that story, the teller and I will have a little discussion. And if you have something to say, please do unmute yourself and say it at that point in time. And then we'll move on to the next story and then the next story. And then after all three stories are done, we'll still give you some time if you want to share some thoughts about what you've heard in those stories. Okay? So with that format, I'd like to start with our very first story. And for that, we have invited Shaheen Manyar. Shaheen is a professional trainer, a coach. That's what she does in her day job. But she's been a part of the Storytellers for a long time and been a part of several events that we have done over the years. And therefore, let's listen to Shaheen and Shaheen's story that she wants to share with us today. Shaheen, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chetan. Today I'm going to share a story that is a Turkish folktale, and it's called The Wicked Girl. Once a merchant and his wife, they set out on a pilgrimage to Mecca. They left their daughter at home with an Arab slave girl to keep her company. Now both the girls got friendly, and late one evening, the merchant's daughter and the Arab girl were singing and dancing and laughing in the upstairs apartment when the Arab slave girl accidentally, knocked into the oil lamp and it fell down. There was total darkness around. What should we do? Said the merchant's daughter. It's too late to wake up the servants, and we can't go to the market because we're locked in. Well, the slave girl, she was smart. So she pointed to the window, and then what they did was they tied some bed sheets together and lowered the bed sheets down. The Arab slave girl picked up a basket, lowered herself with the help of the bed sheets, and started walking around looking for some place where she could get an oil lamp. She walked down the street till she came to a restaurant that was still open. The customers had all gone, but she saw a handsome young man doing something in the kitchen. Maybe he was cleaning up. So she put on her sweetest voice and said, "May I come in?" The young man, who actually owned the restaurant, he cast an eye on the girl. She looked lovely. "Yes, please sit down," he said. As the two of them chatted, the young man moved closer and closer to the girl till he almost touched her. What cheek! The girl looked around and she saw 3 barrels sitting in a corner. So she pointed to them and said, "What's in those barrels?" "Oh," the young man said, "one of them has clarified butter, the other has olive oil, and the third one has honey." "Honey?" she said. "What exactly is honey? Don't tell me you've never tasted honey." "No, I haven't. Can I have some, please?" So the young man, he took the lid off and he leaned forward, putting in a spoon to take out some honey. When the Arab girl came up behind him, picked up his legs, and pushed him into the barrel. She quickly picked up some sweets and some dishes that were lying around, picked up an oil lamp, and ran out of the restaurant. The young man came out of the honey spluttering and dripping. "Oh, that Arab girl! If I ever catch her, I'll drink her blood." Well, the next night, the young girls were again dancing and singing in the upstairs apartment when the Arab girl started thinking about the young, handsome restaurant owner. And she dropped the lamp again. Well, they lowered the bed sheets, and she took her basket and lowered herself onto the ground, walked to the restaurant, knocked. "May I come in?" "How dare you come here? Back again. Do you know what I want to do to you?" "You want to kiss me? Well, well," said the young man with a smile. "That's not a bad idea." And he came forward to embrace her. "No, no, no. We must first eat and drink." So they ate and they drank. And the Arab girl kept pouring him more and more wine. And he kept drinking it till his head dropped onto the table. She quickly found some ropes, tied him up, gagged him. Then she took some more dishes and an oil lamp and ran away. His customers found the restaurant owner in the next morning and freed him. "Oh, that Arab girl! If I ever catch her, I'm going to drink her blood." Soon the young man decided to take things in his own hands, and he dressed himself up as an old flower seller. He wore some dirty old clothes, wore a long white beard, took some roses and started walking up and down the streets, calling out, buy some roses for your Valentine. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Buy some roses." And then when he came to one lane, he looked up and he spotted the Arab girl looking out of an upstairs window. Now, the Arab girl, she pointed him out to the merchant's daughter, and she said, "Excuse me, we would like some roses." "Then please come down and take them," said the young man, dressed as an old flower vendor. "Oh," she said, "we're locked in. You'll have to come up. I'll lower the bed sheets and you can come up to the window." So she lowered the bed sheets and the young man started climbing up. Now, when he was almost halfway there, the Arab girl took a knife and cut the top sheet. And the flowers and the young man went tumbling down. People started gathering around him, and the young man painfully stood up and said, "Oh, that Arab girl, if I ever catch her, I'll drink her blood." Yes. So not long after that, the merchant returned with his wife from the pilgrimage. And he was very happy with the way the Arab slave girl had kept his daughter company. So he called her and said, "I would like to give you a gift. What do you want?" "A doll made of rubber," she said. "It should be just like me, as tall as me, wear clothes like me. And when you shake her, it should say, yes, yes." Strange request. But he had promised her, so he got what she wanted. After a few days, the merchant called the slave girl again and said, "You know, I have received a note from a man who does not want to reveal himself. And he wishes to buy you for a very huge sum of money. But if you say no, I'll refuse." "I don't mind," she said, smiling. And so the next day, a carriage arrived, which took the Arab slave girl and her belongings away. They went a few streets away, and there was the house. The man took the belongings and the slave girl to a room upstairs and left her alone. The slave girl took out her doll, put it in the middle of the room, and then she took a bottle of red sharbat. She poured it in the hollow in the middle of the doll and stood it there. So there was now red, sweet fruit sharbat inside the doll, holding it up. The slave girl went and shut herself in a closet. Soon the door opened, and there stood the young restaurant owner with a dagger in his hand. He glared at the doll, thinking it was the slave girl. He gripped it by the shoulder and said, "Now I have got you, you wicked girl." And he said, "Do you remember that you pushed me into the honey?" "Yes, yes," said the doll. "And do you remember that you tied and gagged me?" "Yes, yes," said the doll. "And do you remember how you threw me to the ground?" "Yes, yes," said the doll. "Oh, so you admit to everything. Be prepared to die, for I want to see your blood." And he plunged the dagger into the heart of the doll. The sharbat splattered all over, and the doll fell back. He cupped his hands to catch a few drops, and he put it to his lips. But what is this? Her blood is so sweet. And if her blood is so sweet, then what about the rest of her? Oh my God, what have I done? I've killed the sweetest woman in the whole world. Oh, if only I could bring her back to life. I would free her and I would marry her. But now it's too late. All I can do now is end my own life. And he picked up the dagger. Suddenly he heard from behind him, "Hey, dummy, I'm right here." He turned round and he saw the Arab slave girl. "Darling," he said, "dearest." And they lived happily ever after. The wicked girl.
Thank you, Shaheen.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll just move us back into gallery view. Thank you, Shaheen. As we typically do, I'd like to give everybody a few seconds of silence just to reflect on the story, just to think about all the lovely moments that came through this drama that we just heard from Shaheen. Okay, Shaheen, tell us my standard question. Why did you pick this story?
Honestly, Chetan, just because it's such a lovely, lively, witty story. I liked it so much.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I think the way you said it also, I was laughing quite a bit. So it was a good, fun story. And had all the elements of a typical Hindi movie where there's a slave girl, she's Arab, and then they play pranks on each other. And this is a Salman Khan, Madhuri Dixit kind of pot boiler.
Even lowering the bed sheets, putting the bed sheets down and lowering yourself down.
Yeah. And then eventually, they fall in love. So
They fall in love.
do you
So
think this ever happens, Shaheen? Do you think it ever happens that you can be so angry and hate someone so much and then fall in love with them?
I've seen it in a lot of Hindi movies. And this reminded me of so many of the Hindi movies. And then I've heard a few of my friends saying, I wanted to play a prank on this girl. And then we played that prank and she got very angry, but then we fell in love with each other. So I guess that is also possible. So, yeah, it's possible. You
Yeah,
can.
I would have found it difficult to believe, except for the fact that I know of a couple who used to take part in debates together and they hated each other for that reason. And
Yes.
the girl irritated the boy no end. She once threw him into a swimming pool. And they've eventually got married. They've been married for 28 years and they're both here on this call. That's Sunita and me. So
So it must resonate with both of you.
absolutely.
I wanted to share this.
I hated her when we first met.
I wanted to share this, but then I said, okay, maybe they don't want everybody to know, so I didn't take names.
Yes, Sunita, your side of the story,
Well, it depends on who was irritating. I was definitely not the irritating one. Can you imagine me being irritating? Impossible.
Would anyone else like to share anything that comes to their mind about this story? Yes, Elaine, please go right ahead. Please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Well, Chetan, it was such a lovely allegory, actually. It struck me because, these kind of stories, you don't know, they're so improbable. They seem so improbable, like this girl, doing this and the silly man. But on the other hand, take it as an allegory. That's what life is about, isn't it? Here you expect it to pan out like this, and you completely plan it and say, I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this, and this is how it's going to end. And in the end, you get a nasty surprise. And this happens every time you say, I've got it all set in my mind. And something will come and jinx it, because nothing, you can't predict anything. So the third time it happens, and at the end you say, this life is, I don't want it anymore. I'm fed up of all this nonsense that always happens. I never get what I want. I'm always in a soup. Everybody is against me, etc., etc. And then suddenly life will just suddenly seem so sweet because of maybe a love, somebody you meet, or just an incident that just puts all the honey, that sharbat, back into life. And you say, it isn't so bad after all, is it? So it's such a beautiful allegory of what life is, just bringing you terrible surprises. And then when you're really up to your, eyes with it, you decide, not so bad. Still got a lot of nice stuff in it.
Absolutely. Yes.
Lovely.
Yeah. Manjari, you want to say something? I'd love to hear what you have to say. Yeah. You're on mute, Manjari. Yes.
Yeah. Shaheen, the most surprising part in your story was the girl going back to the same place next day. That was something that really surprised me. I thought maybe this fellow will come looking for her and now she's going to put that owner's child in front of him, that, well, she's the one who did this. Or another surprise was that doll and that yes and all that. That was really impressive, all those surprises. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed.
I enjoy telling this story because one other thing, Chetan, why I really like the story is that she's so quick-witted, and she thinks so much on her feet that I really liked her for that.
Yeah, that's really nice. Thank you. Srini, are you looking to say something?
Yeah, just an observation, and probably a bit askew and not on the same lines as everyone else was thinking. But I don't think she actually liked this guy. There was no action or nothing she said or did that would reflect or communicate that fact. And till the last moment where she could have just stayed mum and let him kill himself, but she spoke up then. But apart from that, I don't think there was any indication or even an intent from her side to show any kind of affection for this guy. Is it just me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she is just
She's
cute.
a slave girl.
I hate to tell you, she is just cute.
She's a slave girl, Srini. So I guess that's the reason why she couldn't say anything.
Yeah, I think the reason Sunita fell in love with me is because she knew she could irritate me. So she knew she could press my buttons. So I guess that's what makes for a good love story. So anyway, okay. With that, we'll move on to our next story of the day. And for this, we have Sonali. Sonali has been with us for I think a year or through this lockdown for sure, right? Has been a storyteller and she's told stories, and she's recently been through a workshop that Peter conducted as well. So fresh out of the workshop, and she's here to tell us another delightful tale. In fact, all the stories today are rather simple and just simple, delightful tales about love. So Sonali, over to you. Let's hear your story.
Thank you, Chetan. The name of the story is The Cat King's Daughter by Lloyd Alexander. Year one, year all. This is the decree of King Hugo. No one is allowed to eat pickled herrings. No one can go for a holiday. Vacations are banned. And no one is allowed to keep a cat. Can you imagine staying in such a place with so many restrictions? It's almost like you are in the pandemic. But alas, that was how it was in King Hugo's kingdom. And for his daughter, who was Princess Elena, it was a little more worse. King Hugo was against his daughter's love for Count Raymond, who she really wanted to marry. What a useless fellow. All he does is write poetry. He should go hunting somewhere or go to the neighboring kingdom and fight, but here he does nothing. I don't know what my daughter thinks and what she saw in him. So every time Elena and the king had a conversation, they would end up arguing. Elena just told him, how can you ban cats? What will the poor creatures do? And what about stray kittens? Oh, cats, they are the worst of all. They don't sit, they don't fetch, they wave their cat tails in front of your face and they give you a look as cold as brass. And then they stick out their tongue and start cleaning themselves. Well, I don't call that any criminal, it's just hygiene. The king said it's worse than criminal, it's disrespectful, just like hot-headed girls like you who don't take no for an answer. And so all the more Elena urged him, all the more the king said no, she cannot marry Raymond. In fact, he said, from tomorrow, I have called all the prospective grooms from all the neighboring kingdoms, and you shall have to choose a husband for yourself. And he knew Elena would try to escape, so he promptly locked her up in her chambers. Elena was as strong-willed as her father, and she tried every which way to escape. Her father didn't like ivy, so there was no garden ivy on the walls, so there was no strong foothold, and she couldn't climb down the steep towers. She tried to tie all the bed sheets and make a ladder, but it wouldn't reach the ground. She was so frustrated and fed up that she started bitterly crying. Suddenly she heard a voice. Princess, why are you weeping? If I had satin pillows and silk bed sheets, I would never think of leaving. Suddenly, Princess Elena started seeing who was talking, and at her feet, she saw a tabby cat, yellow in color with black stripes, and she was so lean, her ribs could be seen. She was definitely from the alley because her fur was all matted. She was not a princess, she was not a cat from the palace. But Princess Elena said, no cats are allowed in the palace. Yes, but here I am now, said the cat, and my name is Margot. Your father has not made life easy for cats. And I thought I could come from the palace and get something to eat, but everyone is shooing me around. Yesterday I saw your door open and I have been hiding here since then. Yes, said Elena. I know my father has made my life also miserable. I'm longing to get married to Raymond. I love him so much, but he just wouldn't give his consent. And saying this, Elena told all her sad story to Margot. Margot gave her a stare. She was preening her whiskers all the while, and she said, I know how you feel. Even we cats don't like to abide with other people. We do what we want. But I don't see how you're going to get out of this. Your father is definitely going to get you married to one of those blokes. No way, said Elena. I'll do something to myself. I'll put a wart on my nose, or I'll draw a mustache, and none of the suitors will like me. But Margot said, your beauty is too much to hide. Yes, said Elena. Okay, I'll do one more thing. Every suitor that comes, I'll find some or the other fault, and I'll not say yes to anyone. Margot very quietly looked at the princess and said, I have a brilliant idea, which will benefit both you and me. But I should warn you, either it will break your heart or it will give you immense joy. Princess Elena was anyway broken-hearted, and she had no other options, so she decided to listen to Margot. On Margot's instructions, she brushed Margot's fur, which became as shiny as her dresses. She wrapped her up in a silk scarf. She put a pearl of ribbons on her waist. She put a diamond bracelet on her head, which looked as a crown. And she put rubies and sapphires and emeralds on her paws and tail. And Margot told her, you have to hide behind the couch and not come out until I tell you. So the next day, King Hugo was all ready to meet the potential suitors. He came, he unlocked the door. And when he opened the door, what does he see? There, on one of the satin cushions, royally attired, was a cat, stretching itself, comfortably sitting. What? A cat in the palace? Shoo, shoo, shoo. Elena, where are you? Look, there's a cat in your room. He started looking for Elena. And Margot, in a voice very much like Elena, said, Father, how come you do not recognize your own daughter? The king stood transfixed, looking at the cat. And since he couldn't see Elena anywhere, he thought that overnight his daughter had turned herself into a cat. He looked into her emerald eyes, which were just like Elena's. And suddenly astonishment turned to anger, and he waved a finger at Margot and said, You wretched girl, what have you done to yourself? I don't know how you managed to pull this off, but turn yourself into a girl, and that too immediately. Margot replied, I'm sorry, father, but that is not possible. The king said, I will call everyone from the kingdom, the royal physician, even an alchemist, and see that you are back, Princess Elena. Yes, Margot said, do as you please, but I will be a cat for the rest of my life. And at just that moment, the chambermaid came and said that Duke Golo had come to meet Princess Elena. In came Duke Golo. And when he looked at the cat, he looked at the king and said, Your Majesty, is this the princess? She looks very much like a cat. Oh, no, it's nothing, said the king. It's just a minor ailment. She'll be okay, yes, you two should get married. But Your Majesty, look at her claws. If I go to embrace her, she'll scratch me to the bone. And do you think it's contagious? What if I become a cat? No, Your Majesty, I don't think so. I came to ask for your daughter's hand and not her paw. And saying that, he ran away. The next in line was Duke Edward. As soon as he saw the cat, he started laughing away to glory. He said, Your Majesty, I know that some wives are cat, but I never knew a cat who would be a wife. Can you imagine the cat fights we will have? And she'll go dancing on the rooftop with some Tom. I don't think I want to get married to someone who is also going to catch mice. And saying that, he too ran away. Now the king threatened, commanded, cajoled, pleaded with all the suitors, but none of them would agree to marry Elena. At last, the king sat with his head in his hand and said, This wretched girl has disgusted me and she has humiliated me. This is so shameful. At that very moment, the chambermaid came and she said that someone else has come, which was Count Raymond. Elena wanted to jump out of her hiding place as soon as she saw Count Raymond, who looked all the more handsome, and she loved her even all the more. Count Raymond came inside. He looked at the cat and he looked at the king and said, I just heard some rumors right now that Princess Elena has turned into a cat. I thought it was just idle gossip, but I see it is true. Saying that, he bent and gently took Margot's paw into his hand, and he said, Princess, how well you look today. Your fur is so beautiful, and the black highlights, they are to perfection. And look at your beautiful whiskers, like threads of silk. And your paw is so soft, just like velvet. You are just as beautiful as a cat as you were as a woman. The king, who was so disgusted because Count Raymond had the audacity to come to his doorstep, was very angry. But even he thought that even this fellow is going to run away. And he said, Are you mad? Are you talking to a cat? And are you paying court to a cat? Count Raymond got up and said, Yes, she is my beloved as much as she is your daughter. Just because, do lovers just part just because the hair has gone white or the back is bent or because the glow of the cheek is no longer there or the eyes have lost their light? As long as her heart remains unchanged, so will mine, and I will happily marry her. The king couldn't believe his ears. He realized his folly and said, Yes, you are right. I wouldn't want you for a son-in-law, but you seem to have a good heart. And whatever ill fate has befallen my daughter, she is my daughter after all. I give you my blessings for the wedding. Elena was dying to jump up, but she saw Margot's tail, which was waving like a forbidden finger. Don't you get up? And then Margot said, But father, I don't think this wedding is possible. The king couldn't believe his ears. Here she had been convincing him for so long, and now that he's given his consent, she doesn't want to get married. He said, Why? What is your reason now, Elena? Margot said, But father, cats are not allowed in our kingdom. How can Raymond and I get married? Oh, that's the stupidest thing I have ever heard, said the king. I pass the laws and I can break them. From today, I will pass a new law. Everyone should have a cat. All the cats from the neighborhood are invited into my kingdom. But Margot said, There's no need to pass a law. We shall choose our owners and let the owners choose us, and then we will live happily ever after. And then King Hugo had a grand wedding for Princess Elena and Princess Elena, who was sitting in the couch corner, she sprang up straight into Raymond's hand, who was bewildered yet joyful to see that Elena was here. And the king had a grand wedding for Elena and Count Raymond. He called all the cats from the neighboring kingdoms and had tables laden with catnip, fresh bowls of cream and fish. And as per Margot, she was the grand bridesmaid, the royal bridesmaid, who was with the princess's train. And King Hugo, he cancelled all these silly laws. He let his subjects do what they want. He also became very famous because he respected cats so much. And everyone started calling him King Hugo, the cat king. Elena and Raymond lived happily ever after. And Margot, of course, stayed with them. And when Margot saw the funny ways in which kings and courtiers were behaving, she privately judged that it is much, much sensible to be a cat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonali. Thank you for that story. Once again, let's take a few seconds to live with those images of the story that Sonali just told us of the Cat King's daughter. So tell me, Sonali, why did you pick the story?
Yeah, I picked the story because I love cats. So when Peter sent me the story, just looking at the heading, I knew that I'm going to like the story because it had a cat in it. So before I read the story, I knew I would definitely tell this story. It was the cats, of course, and also because a very important thing because it's a Valentine's week and we're talking about love and all that. Yeah, just because someone, becomes old or is disfigured, that doesn't mean you stop loving the person, and love is just not for the outer experience, outer appearance. It's just how a person is. So I really like that part also. So that's the reason I decided to tell the story.
Very nice, Sonali. Thank you so much. And I'm saying you picked what appealed to you in the story was the fact that Count Raymond was so much in love with Elena that he didn't matter how she looked and he wanted to marry her. And what struck me, and which is what I'm saying, even short stories can have so many layers. What struck me really was almost the story about parenting, that we try to bring up children. And if you have a cat, you'll realize that you can never bring up children, right? Children are just going to grow up by themselves because they're not going to listen to you in any case. And and I think that this was the whole layered theme through the whole story. That how much of rules can you impose on grown children? That eventually they are their own person and they will make their own decisions, quite like how you have cats. And the author has quite rightly chosen to make the story about a cat and not a dog, where dogs are generally more obedient and chase after you and stuff like that, but cats seem to have their own personality. So I love cats too. As you probably know, my cat participates in a lot of our sessions and turns up here, so you've probably seen them. So I really like the story, and that was really nice. Anything else that comes to your mind, Sonali, about the story? Anything else that you'd like to comment on?
Yes, yes. Since we're talking about cats, yes, they have their mind of their own, and especially now, women they have the mind of their own. They're so independent, and they want to say what they want. They don't want to just listen to parents. So even if this is a very old story apparently, but even today it's so it's so valid that the children, they just don't want to follow what their parents say. And I think, yes, you're right. That's the reason he's taken a cat, because a cat has a mind of its own and children have a mind of their own. So instead of trying to force them, the parenting should be like just to accept and try to understand their point of view. So even that is a very important part.
Yeah. And the cat was quite cheeky. Margot was quite cheeky that, sorry, someone sharing screen for some reason. Let me just, sorry. So, I thought that Margot was quite cheeky that she came up with this condition that cats had to be allowed. So she got her way in both directions, right? I mean, not only did Elena get married to whom she wanted to, but cats got allowed in the kingdom as well. So that was pretty cheeky and a nice way to kill two birds with one stone, not to kill two stones with one bird. Yeah. Anyone who would like to have? Yes, Sonali, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very clever, I say. I mean, all animals, but yes, they are.
Hi, Divya, tell us. Divya, you have your hand up. Okay, anyone else while Divya finds her voice? Yes, Mercy, please go.
I would like to say, it reminded me of one of the previous sessions. I think it was the last session when which I attended, and where that princess or somebody was had a very serious situation where she had to listen to her husband or to her parents or something like that, and how she found a very good solution, a very amicable solution, or a very nice solution, so that her parent, or I mean, like in this story, the father would not be embarrassed as such, but he would be aware of her idea, and in a very nice manner she managed to get her way, as well as I would like to say that women are coming up have been voicing their opinions for the last many centuries. Earlier it was not so possible, but now of course it is more possible. But I always feel that people who have had the courage in those days to think of clever situations where they like a win-win situation is something to admire.
Yes, absolutely. Well said. Yeah. Actually, I'm also thinking another line of, what Elaine mentioned on the first story about there being an allegorical, that in most of these stories where something fantastic happens, like you have a talking cat, quite often the theme is that actually there is no talking cat. That talking cat represents, just represents a concept or and I was trying to think on what does it represent. And I think that maybe it's just the daughter coming into her own and she decides to behave like a cat, which cats have their own mind, and and therefore she developed her own mind and got the courage to stand up for herself in that tower as she was locked up. So I feel often when stories introduce a fantastic element out of nowhere, they're actually using it to give you a message that makes something that is a concept easier to understand, and a lot of authors use it in that manner. Yes, Divya, you're back. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to look at the story in a different light. You see that the Duke wanted to marry her even when she was a cat, which makes me wonder if he really loved her, or was he more interested in being the next king? And and another thing is that when she turned into a cat, and this king still didn't like the guy, but there was a fear in his mind that this guy would also go away. So it's like, what's happening in his head here? It's interesting.
Yeah, he didn't want her to be an old maid and said, okay, anyone will do, let me just get her married off. Probably. Srini? Yeah.
Yeah, Nate, there's a very good point that the cat doesn't need to be a cat. It's actually representing an idea or a concept. So I was just trying to think, what does this guy who she eventually marries represent as a masculine idea? What does that stand for? A person who is, I don't know. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what would that represent? What does that character represent? A confused person, or maybe just someone who's deeply in love? I don't know, maybe somewhere in between.
Yep, we got to think about that. Yeah,
Maybe it shows that men
the guy everybody wants to marry. All girls want to marry somebody who's willing to marry them no matter what they look like.
Where are these people?
I
also want to know, where are these people? Correct.
Where are these people? I know.
And he writes
where are these men who are willing to marry you no matter what you look like? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Srini, you better start writing some poetry, because that's a definite seller, like once you write poetry, then it really fall for you.
I understand why that king didn't like this count. That's for sure. Really fishy.
Okay, let's move on to the third story, and we can always come back to this discussion at the end. So for the third story, we have a very, very new storyteller. Daksha is going to tell us the story. Daksha is a mother and she's based in Bombay. And she too attended Peter's workshop recently. So she's also fresh out of the workshop. And she has taken the courage to come forward at this session to tell a story. And we welcome her to the storytelling session. Daksha, over to you.
My story is Johnny Lingo's 8-Count Wife by Patricia McGuire. So, when I sailed to Kinimata, an island in the Pacific, I took along a notebook. After I got back, it was filled with the descriptions of flora and fauna, all the native customs and costumes. But the only one note which still impressed me is the one that says Johnny Lingo paid 8 count to Sarita's father. And I don't need to have it in writing. I'm reminded of it every time when I see a woman belittling her husband, or a husband tending to make his wife feel small. I want to tell them all why Johnny Lingo gave 8 count for his wife. Johnny Lingo wasn't exactly his name, but Shenkin, the guest house manager, used to call him that. Shenkin was from Chicago, and he had a habit of Americanizing the name of all the islanders. But Johnny was mentioned by many people in many directions, in many connections. Johnny, if I wanted to spend a few days in the neighboring island of Nurabandi, Johnny could put me up. If I wanted to fish, he could show me where the biting was best. If I wanted pearls, he would bring me the best bites. People of Kinivata, they all spoke highly of Johnny Lingo. Yet, when they spoke, they smiled, and the smile was slightly mocking. Get Johnny Lingo to help you find what you want and let him do the bargaining, advised Shenkin, the guest house manager. Johnny knows how to make a deal. Johnny Lingo, a boy seated nearby hooted the name and rocked with laughter. What's going on? I demanded. Everyone tells me to get in touch with Johnny Lingo and then just breaks up. Let me in on the joke. Oh, people love to laugh, Shenkin said, shrugging. Johnny is the brightest, strongest young man on the island, and for his age, the richest. If he's all that you say, then what is there to laugh about? I asked. Shenkin said, only one thing. 5 months ago, at the Christmas festival, Johnny came to Kinivata and found himself a wife. And he paid 8 cows for her. I knew enough of the island's custom to be impressed. 2 to 3 cows would buy you a fair to middling wife, and 4 to 5 would buy you a highly satisfactory one. Good Lord, 8 cows? I said. She must have the beauty that would take your breath away. She was not ugly, Shenkin conceded with a smile, but it would be kindness to call her plain. She was skinny, she walked with her shoulder hunched, her head ducked. She was scared of her own shadow. And Sam Karu, her father, was afraid that she would be left on his hand. All the cousins of Sam Karu used to tell him that ask for 3 cows and hold for 2 until Johnny agrees to pay for at least 1 cow. But then Johnny came to him and he said, Father of Sarita, I offer you 8 cows for your daughter. Isn't that extraordinary? Never been paid before. I would like to meet this Johnny Lingo. I wanted fish, I wanted pearls. So next day I went to Noorabandi Island. And I noticed as I reached there and asked for the direction to his home, it brought no sly smile to the face of his fellow Noorabindians. I was glad that at least from his own people he had respect unmingled with mockery. And then I saw a slim young man. He welcomed me with a grace to his home. We sat there and talked. Then he asked me, you come here from Kinivata? Even my wife is from Kinivata. I said, yes, I know. Oh, do they speak of us on that island? What do they say? I said, why? Just the question caught me off balance. They say you got married during the festival time and the marriage settlement was 8 cow, and they wonder why. Oh, they talk about that 8 cow settlement. Johnny's eyes were lighted with pleasure. Everyone in Kinivata knows about 8 cows, and everyone in Noorabandi also knows. Always and forever, when they will talk of marriage settlement, it will be remembered that Johnny paid 8 cow for Sarita. Oh, so that's the answer, I thought, vanity. And then I saw her. She entered the room to place some flowers on the table. And she stood there for a moment to smile at the young man sitting beside me. She was the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. The lift to her shoulders, the tilt to her chin, the sparkle of her eyes, they all spelled a pride to which no one could deny her the right. And then she swiftly went out again. I turned back to Johnny Lingo and found him looking at me. And he said, "You admire her? You think 8 cows were too many for her?" I said, "No, no, not at all. She's glorious. And but I don't think she's Sarita from Kinivata. I have heard that she was very homely and she was plain. She could not be the one." Johnny thought for a bit and he said, "There is only one Sarita. Perhaps she doesn't look the way she used to look in Kinivata. So, do you ever think how does a woman will feel when she'll come to know that her husband has settled on the lowest price for which she can be bought? And later on, when women talk about what their husband paid for her, some will say 4 cow, some other may say 6. How does she feel, the woman who was sold for just 1 or 2 cow? This could not happen to my Sarita. So you just did this to make her feel happy?" Mm, yes, I wanted Sarita to be happy, but I wanted more than that. Many things can change a woman. Things happen inside, things happen outside. But the thing which matter the most is what she thinks of herself. In Kinivata, she believed that she was worth nothing. But now she knows that she is worth more than any other woman on the island. I loved her so much. I wanted to marry Sarita. So then I began to understand. Johnny loved so much that he couldn't bear that she feel bad about herself. Johnny wanted her to see what he saw in her. And then he finished so softly I almost couldn't hear that I wanted an 8 cow wife.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Daksha. Uh, I'd like to take a moment. Let's take a few moments to let this story sink in. There is a lot to talk about. Daksha, I loved this story. It was really beautiful, but I'd like to hear from you. Why did you pick this story?
Uh, Peter shared this story with
You
me.
know, everybody
And
says when we ask them, why did you tell the story, that Peter shared the story with you. But I want to know why you liked the story, not why
yeah,
Peter liked it.
so during, yeah, that's what I was going to say. That during the workshop, maybe he got me like what kind of person I am, and then all of a sudden he just shared the story and he said, "I'm sure you will like it," and I'm actually that kind of person. Like this story is very simple and sweet, and I always like happy endings. So and like a girl like very very homely, and she was like this, and then like with support and love, like she blossoms, like it gave a boost to her confidence. And like if there is some person behind you, then like I know there are two things. Like people say that you there are many thoughts also on this affirmations and all. Like you don't need anyone, you are enough for yourself and you can achieve the world. And there are people like strong people who can do that, but people who are like little low on their confidence, and if given little push from behind with love, like they can reach like somewhere very far away. Like they sometimes it is just love what they need at that point in time. So this is me. I can relate so much to this story.
How beautiful, Daksha. Thank you so much for this. I think it's really lovely. Uh, I mean, we've had this common theme in all stories about the almost like the need to get married, and that's a separate debate altogether, whether all women need to get married and why it should be such a big thing. But I just think that this story was so lovely on so many counts. I mean, initially it sort of begins to bother you as to why are they putting a value, why are they objectifying and quantifying it. But when you listen to it, it's really got its layers, and that within that culture of giving cows for a wife, Johnny made such a powerful statement. I mean, and a well thought out powerful statement. It wasn't vanity, it wasn't just to please the girl, but there was so much more to it. I think it's really a lovely story about. And I really like the way, Daksha, that you have connected this with yourself. I think that is so beautiful that you've managed to internalize the story and present it in that manner. Just a thought came to my mind that we are in the weekend of the IPL auction, and I'm saying that's a place where even today we are still putting a value on somebody, and publicly putting a value on somebody. I mean, it wouldn't be nice to talk about a dowry system, though this is a reverse dowry. This is like a man paying for his wife. But I'm saying, we are still going to boast about tomorrow morning's paper as to who got paid 15 crores and who got, and that's going to be on your forehead that I am a 2 crore buy, I'm a 15 crore buy, I'm a 50 lakh buy. And in a way, I feel it demeans our cricketers, but by publicly announcing this, it's like all of us telling each other our salaries. It's not very nice to do it that way. So I was saying, I'm just telling you how this story also brought that to my mind about that. But really a very beautiful story. I'd love to hear what others have to say about this and what they think about this. Yes, Srini, please go ahead.
So, first of all, beautiful story, deeply layered. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for it. Two things that I noticed is people in her village still made fun of him for giving 8 cows, in spite of the fact. So it's basically for a person to change and develop and realize their self-worth, they need that nudge of confidence, but more importantly, they need a change of set and setting and their immediate surroundings to reinforce that belief in themselves. So it's a combination of both, the gesture to get the ball rolling from him by Johnny, but the real improvements, started coming once she changed her immediate surroundings and her, company that she was in.
Good point. Yeah. Very nice. Yeah, Divya.
One thing I wanted to say is that, you see, women in general have a very lower feel about themselves. And you'll see it mainly in salary negotiations where they think they don't deserve enough. So they'll not fight for a salary that is equivalent. So they'll always feel that I do not maybe deserve as much, or those things are changing now. But it is a mindset that has been there for years.
No, absolutely. I think yesterday there was an article, right, that in the UK, women still draw 80% or less than men's salaries. Now, if that's the case in the UK, you can just imagine what it is in India. So it's going to be a lot more different. Yeah, that's a very valid point. Manjari, what would you like to share about this?
Yeah, I like the metaphor in this story. 8 cow wife. These 8 cows, they represent the worth of the person, isn't it? We're talking of as if some auction of value. No, it is the worth of the person, and it makes her feel worthwhile. It really makes her feel, and it will draw the inner beauty out. Definitely. When somebody is told that you are worth 1 crore, you are worth 1 million, obviously the person will feel more beautiful. That is the idea of the story, which is a beautiful story and told very nicely. Thank you, Daksha.
Yeah,
thanks a lot.
Anyone else would like to say something? Yes, Bhavna, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Hi. So, what I found really beautiful about this story is like Johnny found out how, his wife wanted to be loved, and he loved her exactly in that way. Like, he looked for the nudge that she needed to, like, be herself, as in, earlier she was this simple girl, and then she turns into somebody that the narrator does not even recognize. So it's basically, all this time, where when she was a simple girl, she was just waiting to break out, waiting for that nudge to sort of like tell her, you're worth being yourself, just be yourself. Okay. So that was very pretty, because like in a lot of incidences where I hear that, my partner did this for me, did that for me, but how much did the receiving partner actually want that to be done for them? It's like, "Yaar, yaar, mere ko ye bhi gift jhelna padega" types. So it was in that. So yeah, I found it very beautiful. Like he looked for how she wanted to be loved, and he gave her exactly the nudge that she needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I have, sorry, Shaheen wants to say something, and I also have a lot to say, but I don't want to dominate this conversation. I would like to say, Tammy, Hardika, Mary, Rehanath, if I'm saying your name right. Please, Anita, do jump in and say, contribute something. Yeah, Shaheen, go ahead, please.
So, of course, it's, love is in the air and it's Valentine's Day tomorrow. But I feel that there's more to this than just love, because he gave her worth, and he gave her value. He made her realize that it wasn't just the outward appearance that was important to him. He made her feel that he knew the true worth that she was. And that's really very, very important for any human being, not just for wives or prospective wives or, sweethearts, for anybody. Imagine if we all did that. It would be such a beautiful place to live in, wouldn't it? I mean, the world would be so beautiful. Bosses truly valuing their team members, and husband and wives valuing their children, valuing each other. That was what I thought of when I was listening to this beautiful story. Thank you, Daksha, for that.
Anyone else? Any of the so far silent people? Elaine, I see your hand. I'm just giving the others a moment. Yes, Elaine, please go ahead.
Just a short comment of how a custom which most people say, it's not very nice to put a value. There's so many customs like that, that this man actually turned around the same custom and made it, used it to his advantage and to her advantage. It was so lovely. I was reading a book the other day also, which said that when you find the man who actually knows the kind of flowers you like and takes the trouble to give those to you, it's wonderful. So it's like that.
Very nice. Yeah. Yes, Tammy, please go ahead.
Not really only for the men to make the women feel wanted and loved. It is a duty that everyone has to each other, every man, every woman, for each other, to make the other person, to make the opposite person feel good about themselves, loved and cared for. That's what I feel. It was a great story. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tammy. Yeah. One other, yes, Sunita, please go.
No, I just want to reiterate what Tammy's saying. I mean, it was bothering me all this time hearing people say that, he did so much for her to feel worthwhile. And it's really the time for us to take gender out of it. It's important that we do this irrespective of gender. I think in our age and time, it's important that women do it as much for men as men do it for women. So, yeah, and just to bring up the IPL, Chetan, I just want to tell you that Suresh Raina didn't get sold at all. Nobody picked Suresh Raina at IPL. Can you imagine? What a fabulous cricketer. And for a statement like that, I mean, I want to send him some love. Horrible. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so in business, we constantly talk about price and value, right? And I'm saying that we're all trained to get away with the lowest price we can, and get the maximum value, right? And here was a story of giving value for value and not getting away with the lowest price. And sometimes we have people, we find products, we find services that we really believe are worth more than what we're paying for it. And how often will we step in and say, no, I really think this is worth more, and I want to pay more, uh, because I really value this, and I really want to encourage this kind of behavior, this kind of service, this kind of products. And I want this world to be made up of people like this, and not those who are overpricing their value, and I'm being forced to pay for it because there's no option. Yet another management concept that comes to my mind is this thing about the Pygmalion effect. We often say that the Pygmalion is, going by George Bernard Shaw's book on Pygmalion, is that typically first bosses have a great impact on their on a new employee, a fresher who joins a company. Their first boss has a great impact on them, saying that if their first boss treats them like an idiot, they'll become idiots. Right? If their first boss treats them like, wow, you're a genius, you have such great ideas, I want to hear more, you've done a good job over here, then they become those kind of people. And we sort of tend to become the way we are treated. So if we treat somebody saying that you're good for nothing and your opinions don't matter at all, then that person will not voice their opinions. Whereas if we encourage them and say, I like what you said, and this is, then it will help their creativity. They will come up with more ideas. So this applies to bosses, it applies to parents, it applies to spouses, friends, I think everyone. Yeah. So I think with that, we've finished with the 3 stories. And, if at all anyone wants to say anything about all the previous stories also, there is a little time to talk about it. Yes, Mercy, please go ahead. You're still not unmuted.
Yeah. So I just want to make 3 generalized statements generally about all the 3 stories. One is that love happens. It just happens, especially when you choose your marriage partner. It's very inexplicable, and I'm sure all those who are married have understood that. And as they say, marriages are made in heaven. You never know whom you just say yes to out of the blue. And that is one. The second one is if one has to be happy, one should expect nothing. The less you expect, the happier you are, the more surprised you are, you feel happy. The more you expect, you feel miserable. Even if that person is giving you the moon, you will still say, no, but I wanted something else. So, the expectations have to be, this is a general statement where expectations go. It's, for any relationship. And number 3 is, again, a general statement, not husband-wife only, but it could be other relationships. Positive strokes or positive reinforcements give a lot of, gives magical results rather than, negative strokes. So if you say something good, or you say, you are this and you are that, and you really feel, and then you really become beautiful, or you really become talented or whatever, just because you are made to feel great. And I just want to, I love this statement a lot. So I just wanted to say, I wanted to repeat this: wives are cats and cats are wives. Cats are not wives, or something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but I just love that statement.
It's that cats, sometimes wives are cats. But I've never heard of cat being a wife.
Wife, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying it, but I just love that.
Thank you so much, Mercy. Anyone else has anything to add? I think we've had really 3 simple stories, but the beauty of it is when you start talking about it, you realize that no story is really simple. They are all so layered, so laden with messages, and give us so many dimensions that we can talk about, think about, etc. I'm sure I'm going to be thinking about these 3 stories for the rest of the evening, and probably I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning with some of these visions in my mind as well. So really simple stories, well told and appropriately, discussed, I think really are very powerful, and that's what we, the storytellers, are out to achieve. I'd like to head towards, that, we have time if anyone else wants to say anything, but I'd just like to remind you that on the 26th of February, we have a session on a retrospective on Rajendra Singh Bedi's stories. Rajendra Singh Bedi was a writer who wrote short stories, wrote movies, etc. And some of his short stories are so beautiful. I mean, the depth of the human emotion in them. I really hope that we can bring that out for you when we are here on the 26th and speak about it. I have fallen in love with Rajendra Singh Bedi, and he is the master of myth and metaphor. So there are so many metaphors in what he talks about. So I would really invite you all to come. Let's listen to these geniuses. These guys have not become immortal and famous for nothing. Really, when you pick a story that is great, you realize that there is a good reason why those stories have stood the test of time, and why we find these stories that were written 70 years ago as relevant today as they were when they were written. It's not that time has not moved, but those stories touch upon such basic human elements that that doesn't change, and that's what makes their stories timeless. So I invite you all to join us there, and also I invite you all to please, those of you who haven't told a story for a while, or those of you who have never told a story, this is the forum. Come forward and tell a story. The second Saturday of every month is open to new storytellers, to anyone who has a story to tell. Our requirements, or therefore I would say our guidelines, are the story should be in English. 10 minutes is the time period that we give you, and we'd like this to be a published story rather than a personal storytelling. We have nothing against personal stories, but personal stories sometimes tend to drag, and they mean something only to the person who's telling them, and it's sometimes difficult to make a connection. Therefore, we want to ride on the shoulder of published authors who have given it some thought and gone through some editing themselves. And that's the reason we focus on this. So if you ever come across a story, or you have a story that has been waiting to be told, please put your hand up and write to one of us, write into the Facebook group, and let us know. We'd love to put you on the roster for the second Saturday of March. Peter, you want to tell a story on the second Saturday of March?
No. I just want to say something when you're finished.
Yes. So therefore, 2 requests: join us on the 26th, and then also volunteer to tell a story in March or in April or whenever you're ready. And this is an open forum, so anyone can come and tell. Yes, Peter.
Yeah. So thanks, Chetan, for this hosting today's thing. And for the rest of us here, Chetan actually told his very first story many years ago for a Valentine's Day, and he chose to tell Ispat Chutte's Gharwali of all stories. And that's actually where my romance with stories that were not folk tales, that is the more literary genre of stories, began. And looking at all the people on the screen, I realized that you all have all been part of this journey, which started with Chetan and practically ends with Daksha. So to see both of them here, and to see all the other faces who have been between these 2 brackets, have been part of the storytellers, have been part of storytelling, just a way of acknowledging. And to take what Sunita said one step further, we need to take gender out of it. We need to take age out of it. We need to take everything out of it and just extend this love and give people their worth without really, like expecting anything in return except the joy that it brings to them. Okay, I'm out.
Wow, that's a lovely message, Peter. And so on that note, I wish you all a wonderful Valentine's Day, and a lot of love every day, not only just on Valentine's Day, on every day of the year. Give and receive love, and enjoy the relationships that you have. So with that, we'll sign off. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been
Thanks,
a nice
thanks everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Manjari.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Lovely session.
Good session.
Enjoyed it.